Imagine being born without magic in a world where everything is done with magic. Today, we're going to see the story of Mash, a boy without magic but who makes up for it with his incredible strength, overcoming all challenges by beating everything and everyone up. It seems like Saitama's son was born in a world of magic. But, before we start, smash that like button and subscribe to give us a big help, alright? Let's go to the recap. The anime begins by introducing us to how the magical world works. By the way, right from the first scenes, we see many references to Harry Potter, like people flying on broomsticks, and the scenery looks very similar. As you can see, we notice that using magic is as natural for people as breathing. And in this world, the higher your magical ability, the higher your social status. However, in the depths of the forest surrounding the city, lives a boy who is completely outside this magical reality. His name is Mash, and even the animals are astonished by his physical training. Then we see his adoptive father, who claims to be 75 years old and unmoved by anything. But when he sees Mash breaking the door, the old man gets angry. He asks why on earth he broke the door, and Mash simply replies that he didn't know whether to push or pull. Mash feels sad and apologizes, saying he will fix it. His grandfather, seeing him so polite, calms down and forgives him. This will be a common theme in the anime, where Mash's grandfather always softens up when Mash behaves nicely. Later, while talking to his grandfather, Mash asks why he only does physical training. His grandfather thinks for a moment and says that Mash is different, as he can't use any magic unlike others. But he doesn't say anything to Mash, mentioning that maybe he'll tell him someday. He says he's going out for a bit and instructs Mash not to go to the city under any circumstances. Mash confirms and says he won't. As soon as his grandfather leaves, Mash runs off to the city. He takes a look around, and notices that everyone uses magic, but he doesn't pay much attention. Mash arrives at the shop where his favorite sweet, profiterole, is sold. He orders 7 and hands the coins to the seller. But as he hands them over, the coins are completely bent. Mash regrets, saying that due to his anxiety to buy his favorite sweet, he ended up crushing them. But he tells the guy not to worry since he'll fix them soon. Nonchalantly, he simply straightens the coins with his own hands. The merchant is obviously shocked to witness this and finds it very frightening. After buying and leaving, the cap that Mash was wearing is blown away by the wind. At that moment, everyone observes him and notices that he is different because he doesn't have the mark on his face like everyone else, which indicates that he doesn't have magic. After that, we're shown a guy who seems to be very important, and he receives a call informing him that there's a boy without a mark in the city. Mash nonchalantly walks away, enjoying his profiterole. As he passes by, everyone is staring at him, surprised. But suddenly, Mash bumps into a policeman and ends up staining his uniform with the sweet. The policeman, despite being on duty, is drinking and starts complaining to Mash. He asks what he's going to do to clean his uniform. Mash takes the uniform from him and rips it completely. The policeman is in shock. Mash says he's sorry and that he'll take the uniform to wash. At that moment, the important-looking guy appears and notices that Mash doesn't have the mark on his face. As the guy is about to approach Mash, his father takes him and runs away, apologizing for Mash. The blonde guy uses magic, and a kind of bird chases Mash and his father. When they arrive home, Mash receives a serious scolding. His father says he always tells him not to go to the city. Mash feels sad and apologizes. Again, his father softens up seeing him being good, saying he won't be angry anymore. But as punishment, Mash has to repeat the training he did that morning. Later, the blonde guy, along with other policemen, appears at their house. Meanwhile, Mash is training in the forest, and even the animals are impressed by his training. At the house, the policemen start beating up Mash's father and telling him that he knows he shouldn't take care of non-magic people, as those who are born without magic are eliminated in that world. Mash arrives and listens behind the door, seeing that his grandfather is being mistreated. After that, we're shown how he met Mash. Mash was abandoned, and the old man found him and ended up taking care of him as if he were his son. He says that even without blood ties, he considers him his true son. After that, Mash enters and delivers a punch to the first guy, and he grabs that chubby guy from the city and rips his uniform again, then gives him a series of consecutive normal slaps. Now, only the blonde guy is left. Mash looks at them and in a badass way, he says that if they don't give up, he'll send them all to hell. Then, their leader starts casting a spell that appears to be very powerful. But Mash stops the spell using just a simple slap. The policeman tries again with several spells. Mash easily deals with them, and at one point, he even juggles with them and plays soccer with the spells. Then, Mash takes his grandfather's wand. The blonde guy asks if he can use magic too, but unexpectedly, Mash uses the wand as a dart and throws it towards the policeman with incredible speed. Luckily for him, it just grazes him, but it ends up stuck in the stone wall of the house. The guy, seeing this, is astonished. Mash again tells him that if he lays a finger on his family again, he'll drag him to hell. The old man, like the policeman, is shocked. He says that it's true he trained him to defend himself, but he never expected him to reach this point. At that moment, the policeman starts laughing and says he has a proposal for them. If they don't want to be chased for the rest of their lives, Mash must enter the School of Magic and become the Divine Visionary, a title given to the best student of the school. He says that being the Divine Visionary means he was chosen by God, and society would be obliged to accept him even if he couldn't use magic. And the policeman says that, in exchange, he just wants the money and privileges that come with that title. Mash doesn't hesitate much and quickly accepts. He says he wants to live in peace with his father again, who gets emotional seeing him being good once more. On the next day, they arrive at the school, and Mash will go through the tests alongside hundreds of students. We're introduced to the examiner, who observes from above and finds it really odd to see a guy lifting weights at a magic school, but he decides not to care too much. After that, he appears in a dramatic fashion below. The students are impressed since he is well known and has mastered several high-level spells. He is happy to be recognized and starts talking. Then, he summons some desks and tables for them to take the exam. The students are impressed, but Mash asks if it wouldn't have been easier to have everything ready already. This makes the guy angry, but he comforts himself, saying that only 3% pass, and a clown like Mash will certainly fail. And then the exam begins. Everyone is desperate since the letters in the test are all jumbled up. The test is to disperse magical energy and make the letters stop moving so they can answer the questions. Mash gets irritated and ends up breaking his pen, telling the letters in a menacing way that it's annoying that they keep moving. Surprisingly, the letters get scared and align themselves. He hands in the test, and the examiner is astonished to find all the answers correct. Then we move on to the practical tests, where Mash always manages to use brute force to overcome them. And so, he passes test after test. The examiner gets angry seeing this and decides to step up his game. The next test is to cross a maze, but not just any maze. It has some traps inside. They have 30 minutes to reach the other side. When they start, a blonde girl approaches Mash and asks if she can go with him, as it would be much easier to progress with two people. Mash accepts and they move forward, but he notices that the girl is incredibly clueless and falls into several traps. Mash wonders if this is really faster than going alone. Mash decides to run, but the girl summons some handcuffs that restrain him. He asks her why she did that, and she reveals that she has her reasons. Mash asks what those reasons are. She says she doesn't want to say. Mash tells her that he has to pass the test and immediately breaks the handcuffs. Then, a monster appears and attacks the girl, but before she's hit, Mash appears and saves her. At that moment, the damn instructor starts smiling, saying there's not much time left, and Mash will surely be eliminated. But Mash takes the girl and starts going through all the walls until they reach the end of the maze. From above, the school director says that an interesting boy has appeared, and he's kind of excited. After that, the instructor reveals that he hired the girl to disrupt Mash, and since she was of no use, he'll have to use force to eliminate him from the selection. He begins to cast a spell and says that if Mash wants to continue, he'd better do something before he goes off base. Mash simply breaks his wand right there, and the guy doesn't understand a thing. After that, the school director appears and approves Mash's entry, and he goes for the last test, a kind of interview with the director and some members of the council. The director asks why he wants to enter there, and Mash responds that his reason is to live in peace with his family. Then the director gives Mash another test. He uses a spell that traps the soul of the most important person to the target inside a doll, and when that doll is stabbed, the person outside will lose consciousness. The director adds that it's not just that, if the doll is stabbed with his soul inside, he'll go off base. Mash tries to beat the trap, but it doesn't work, so he decides to simply place his hand under the blade and hold it, as a spell of that size can't be maintained for long. The old man is impressed and says that Mash uses his strength to help people, and that's a testament to his character, making him pass that test. Soon, the spell is dissipated, and his father's soul returns to his body. Some time later, a teacher begins to teach a lock-opening spell. She asks them to practice, and Mash simply breaks the padlock and tells the teacher he already did it. Obviously, she gets angry and starts scolding him, saying he should use magic. Later, Mash goes to his dorm room and meets his roommate. He introduces himself and takes the opportunity to introduce the names he put on each of his muscles. They talk a bit, and Mash encourages them to work hard together. Today's video begins with Mash asking his roommate for a broom so he can attend the flying class. Finn lends him one, and Mash mentions that he's a really nice guy. Then, Mash goes to the flying class, and the teacher starts explaining how to make the broom come to your hand. However, as expected, our protagonist can't do it because he has no magical power. A classmate mocks him for his inability to make the broom fly. Mash then stomps on the ground, and the broom flies up to his hand. The guy is shocked and doesn't understand what just happened, accusing Mash of cheating. After that, the teacher decides to see how fast they can go, and the annoying guy challenges Mash to a race to see who can go faster. The teacher signals them to start, and in the blink of an eye, Mash ends up way ahead. Once again, the guy is left bewildered, not understanding a thing. The teacher is also astonished, claiming that it must be a world record. Later, it's explained how Mash achieved this. He threw his broom and then jumped on it, allowing him to fly for a certain distance. Afterward, a blonde guy named Cavill approaches Mash, and everyone around starts commenting that Mash is in trouble because Cavill marked. The teacher tells him to leave since they're in the middle of a class. The blonde guy bids farewell, saying he wants to meet Mash in the same spot after classes that day. After this, we see the blonde guy beating up the guy who tried to intimidate Mash. We find out that he was acting under Cavill's orders and, failing to complete his task, got beaten up. Back to Mash and Finn. Mash asks Finn who that guy is, and he explains that he's the son of a high-ranking official from the Magic Bureau, which is why everyone is afraid of him. Those who oppose him get expelled because the vice director covers for him. When classes end, Mash goes to do something very important. You might think he's going to meet the blonde guy, right? But no, Mash went to make his beloved profiteroles. He realizes he forgot something, and at that moment, we see the blonde guy and his lackeys waiting for Mash under the scorching sun, and he seems quite angry. The next day, while grabbing his book to start studying, Mash notices that it's completely crushed. Some students in the background laugh. After this, the blonde guy comes to Mash and says he noticed he didn't show up yesterday. Mash apologizes, saying he was making profiteroles. Cavill then mentions that he has many contacts and knows that Mash wants to become a divine visionary. He proposes that if Mash does what he says, he'll recommend him to his contacts. Mash readily agrees, and the blonde guy starts ordering him to do absurd things, like carrying his stuff, cleaning his shoes, and more. In the next class, Mash notices that his other book is also completely crushed. He asks Finn if he can share his, and even before Finn agrees, Mash starts thanking him, saying that Finn is truly a good friend. Later on, you'll see that it's not quite like that. Later, Mash meets with Cavill. The blonde guy pours water on the ground and orders Mash to clean it. Mash ends up scrubbing so hard that the stone floor shines. After this, we realize that Cavill has been pressuring Finn from the beginning and that he was the one damaging Mash's books. Now, he orders Finn to burn Mash's clothes. However, Finn refuses to do what he says anymore, claiming that Mash is a true friend. After that, he uses magic and starts hurting Finn. Mash arrives at this moment and witnesses everything. He asks what he's doing and checks on Finn's condition. Finn starts crying and admits that he was the one tearing Mash's books because Cavill forced him to do it, and he was afraid of getting expelled. He apologizes to Mash. Mash gets furious and confronts the blonde guy, grabbing him by the hair and slamming his face into the ground. After that, the vice director arrives and threatens Mash, but while he's talking, Mash gives him a knee to the face. That's right, a knee. The director threatens to expel Mash again, but Mash simply digs a hole and starts burying him. Mash wears a badass expression and says that just like he can expel him anytime, he can bury him whenever he wants. The old man becomes desperate and starts screaming. Then, Mash is sent to the council, and the director asks if he knows why he's been summoned. Mash says yes, and the director explains that what he did will cause a lot of trouble at the Magic Bureau. He received a letter requesting Mashle's expulsion, but he won't do it. He doesn't want a world that punishes good-hearted people, and that's why he wants Mashle to stay and become a divine visionary. He then explains what Mashle needs to do to become one. Tell him that he needs to be the best student in the school, and to do that, he needs to earn coins in classes and other school activities. While the director explained this, Mashle becomes paralyzed, realizing that it will be very difficult for him to achieve this. After regaining consciousness, the director summarizes that he should just excel in his classes. After that, Tom, the leader of the dueling team, which is like Quidditch in Harry Potter, approaches Mashle and invites him to join the dueling team. The next day, Mashle ends up on the dueling team. The game begins, and unlike others, Mashle stays on the ground since he obviously can't fly. His team starts taking a beating, and Mashle remains on the ground. At one point, Tom comes to talk to Mashle and tries to encourage him, but while he was speaking, a guy from the opposing team knocks him off his broom, causing Tom to break his arm. Tom leaves the mission of winning to Mashle, who is motivated by Tom's words and decides to step up. He starts shaking his legs and manages to stay in the air. Mashle grabs the ball and throws it with great force, scoring a point. However, they still need 49 more, and time is running out. The ball returns to Mashle's hand, and he continues to throw curved balls, scoring many points. Eventually, time runs out, and Mashle's team has scored an incredible 999 points, a world record in the sport. As a reward, he receives a silver coin. Afterward, Tom comes to thank Mashle. And then, we see a boy reading an article about Mashle in the newspaper. By the way, does this moving newspaper remind you of a certain story about a wizard? The guy seems a bit annoyed, and Mashle quickly becomes his target. The next day, he appears in the classroom and traps Mashle's friends in a bottle. He says that if Mashle wants them back, he should go to the forest to retrieve them. The guy's name is Lancer, and Mashle heads to the forest to confront him. Mashle asks what he wants, and Lancer says he wants to make a bet with him, and if he wins, he'll give Mashle a silver coin and return his friends. After that, the anime explains about marks, saying that most magicians have a single mark, but 1 in every 10,000 are born with 2 marks, and they usually have a lot of power. We return to the forest, and Lancer says they will have a magical duel, something that is forbidden within the school. They start, and Lancer uses gravity magic to prepare the ground for the fight. After that, Mashle charges at him to punch him. Lancer uses gravity magic again, and Mashle falls to the ground. A little later, Mashle gradually manages to get up and punches the ground. Afterward, he grabs a root and pulls it with all his strength. By pulling it, he throws Lancer far away and dispels his magic. The boy is impressed by Mashle's strength. Mashle approaches him, and Lancer uses gravity magic again, but this time it doesn't have much effect. Mashle continues to attack, until at one point, Lancer's amulet falls to the ground, and Mashle picks it up and opens it. Seeing a picture of a little girl, Mashle asks if he's a Lullicon, but Lancer denies it, saying he's a Siscon, that little girl is his sister. Mashle returns the amulet, and Lancer says he's going to finish him now. He mentions that he'll throw the bottle containing Mashle's friends off the cliff and use gravity magic to accelerate their fall. If Mashle can't catch them before they hit the ground, they will be dragged upwards. At this moment, we see a bit of Lancer's relationship with his little sister. We see that he is very close to her, and she suffers from a rare disease that causes the magical power of the bearer to gradually diminish until there is nothing left. And the reason Lancer wants to become the divine visionary is to protect his dear sister. We return to the cliff, and Lancer throws the bottle along with his gravity magic. Mashle takes off his clothes, leaving only his underwear and training outfit. He positions himself as if he were on a starting line and runs incredibly fast to retrieve the bottle. But upon returning, he realizes that the bottle is empty. He tells Lancer to stop, as the fight doesn't make sense. He approaches him and searches all over his clothes until he finds his friends. At this moment, Lancer gives up and leaves. But before leaving, as promised, today's episode starts by explaining that in that school, there are 3 houses, and students are allocated according to their conviction. Any resemblance to Harry Potter is purely coincidental. The Adler House, where Mashle is assigned, is for those with great bravery and conviction. The Orca House allocates the wisest and most diligent students. And finally, the Lang House is designated for the talented and proud. These 3 houses have a constant rivalry, constantly competing against each other in school events and challenges. After this quick explanation, we see Mashle looking at his silver coins. He mentions that if he gathers 5 silver coins, they will turn into 1 gold coin. They enjoy a peaceful day with nothing to do, or so they thought until they remembered they have a pharmacology lesson to attend. Finn becomes desperate, but as always, Mash shows no concern. Afterward, the Siscon Lance, who attacked them in the previous episode, appears and offers to help them with their lesson. He starts by saying that Mash and Finn will tarnish the Adler house's reputation if they continue like this. At that moment, Mash pulls out a brooch with Lance's sister's photo and points it at his face. Lance is shocked, as he loves his sister dearly, and he ends up being thrown against the wall with a big impact. That was weird, man. They then head to the kitchen to begin their lesson. We learn that it's about mandrakes that scream a lot, but any resemblance is purely coincidental. Basically, they need to use magic to calm the mandrake, as when it's quiet, it becomes a valuable ingredient for potion making. Finn tries and quickly succeeds in calming his mandrake. However, when Mash attempts it, the mandrake becomes extremely agitated and keeps growing. It starts attacking Mash, but he slaps it, and it faints. Mash claims victory. After that, they start preparing the mandrake, and Lance shows how to make a potion with. Mash then says that he can do it easily without using magic. He follows the same steps as Lance, but, unlike him, the end result is a mandrake profiterole. Finn is shocked and wonders why it turned into a profiterole. After the lesson, we see members of the Lang house who seem to be planning to steal all the coins from the other houses. Later, they head to the front of a forest, and it's revealed that the next test will take place there. Next, we see a red-haired guy who thinks highly of himself and starts singing that everyone should bow down to him. He sees Mash talking to the blonde girl and gets furious since he dislikes guys who are pampered by girls, as no girl ever liked him. Mash and the others leave him talking to himself, and at that moment, the test instructor appears and explains how it will work. The mission is to annihilate the forest scorpions, a very strong monster, and they must bring back the stones that are on their heads as proof. Mash and Lance enter the forest together, but Mash loses sight of him and ends up alone. That's when Mash encounters the red-haired guy, who starts yelling. Mash slaps him and tells him to shut up. At that moment, they hear a girl screaming and go to see what happened. Apparently, a boy was bothering the girl who screamed. The red-haired guy attacks the boy with fire and defeats him. Afterward, the girl thanks him in a cute way, and he starts falling for her. She tries to get closer to him, making him fall for her since no girl ever liked him. At this moment, the girl reveals in her thoughts that she used seduction magic to make the red-haired guy fall for her and that now he's under her control. She then tries the same with Mash, but it doesn't work at all. She tries again, using more force in her magic, but once again, it has no effect on Mash. She's shocked since no one has ever resisted her charm. They talk for a bit, and she mentions that Silva, a second-year boy, has been bothering her and she sheds a few tears. The red-haired guy, upon seeing this, says he'll deal with that guy. Just then, Silva arrives and starts attacking, already hitting the like button and subscribing to the video. You should do that too. Actually, he arrives and attacks them. They dodge, and it turns into a brawl. The red-haired guy starts attacking with great force, but Silva easily defends against all his attacks. Silva then proposes a challenge. If the red-haired guy can withstand Silva's magic 5 times, he wins, and Silva will give him a silver coin. He accepts, saying he can easily handle 5 attacks. However, Silva adds that Mash must also withstand 5 attacks since they are together. The red-haired guy says Mash has nothing to do with it and that he'll take Mash's part too, making it a total of 10 attacks. And it's a deal. Silva starts sending one attack after another, and the red-haired guy, holds up well until the last attack. Instructs him to send the final attack, which hits him directly. Falls but quickly gets up, claiming he endured all 10 attacks. He stumbles towards Silva but collapses, completely drained of energy. Silva starts talking trash and attacks once more, breaking the agreement of 10 attacks. At this moment, we see that the girl was by Silva's side all along, and this was all set up to catch Mash throws a profiterole into Silva's mouth and tells him to shut up. Now it's Mash's turn, and he asks Silva to launch his 10 attacks on him too, saying, "Bring it on, you trash." Silva tries to hit Dot again, but Mash quickly intervenes. Silva erects a metal pillar and pushes Mash away. Silva claims that Mash could never defeat him since he already earned 2 gold coins in his first year, and his strength is on a different level. Then, he starts attacking Mash multiple times. However, during one of the attacks, Mash stops it with his own hands and conjures triceps magic, something that clearly doesn't exist. Mash approaches Silva, breaking each of his magic spells with punches. Mash gets close to Silva and lands a massive punch to his face, sending him flying. Silva attacks Mash again, but Mash, in anger, delivers another punch to Silva's stomach. However, he doesn't finish him off and instead goes back and sits on a tree. Mash strikes a badass pose and says that was only the second punch, challenging Silva to withstand 10 punches. He wants to see this so-called difference in levels that Silva talked about. Afterward, he gets up and heads towards Silva, asking once more if he can handle the third punch. At that moment, they hear the sound of something approaching in the forest. Soon, it's revealed that the sound was caused by a gigantic scorpion, which instead of having a silver symbol on its forehead, has a golden star, making it the strongest of all. Silva is happy and plans to escape while Mash deals with the scorpion. However, Mash defeats the giant scorpion with just a slap and tells Silva that he's busy now. At this moment, Silva starts sweating profusely, unable to understand how he, the guy who earned 2 gold coins in his first year, is getting beaten up like this. Mash suggests they stop there, as he's starting to feel sorry for Silva. At that moment, Mash turns to the girl, who starts crying to make Mash feel pity for her. Mash hugs her from behind and says that it's okay. She thinks she has won him over, but then Mash tells her that it's fine because he believes in gender equality and pats her on the back. Next, Mash reunites with his friends and informs them that he defeated Silva and the star-marked scorpion, which is worth 2 silver coins. After that, Lancer gives a warning. He says that the Lang house is hunting for coins from everyone, especially from those in the Adler house. At this moment, Mash's pocket starts to glow, and he realizes that his 5 silver coins have turned into a gold coin. Mash then asks if it's true that students are divided into houses. They confirm, and Mash remembers the selection process where instead of a sorting hat, they went through the unicorn selector's skeleton. The skeleton read the students' minds and decided which house they should belong to. However, when it was Mash's turn, the skeleton failed miserably because his mind was filled with thoughts of profiteroles, making it difficult to choose his house. Later, Lancer talks about the Lang house, explaining that their core consists of 7 people, and Silva seems to be one of their subordinates sent to subdue Mash and Dot. He also mentions that they are trying to collect all the coins to prevent impure bloodlines from becoming the divine visionary. Lancer advises Mash that, since he has a gold coin, he should try to avoid getting involved with students from the Lang house and should stick with his own housemates. Mash agrees and sets off but soon gets lost and accidentally enters the Lang house's headquarters. Before Mash enters, they were punishing Silva for failing to get Mash's coins. Silva asks for another chance, but the Lang house leader turns him into a puppet, just like several others in the room. At this moment, Mash opens the door with a broken handle in his hand, apologizing for not knowing if it was a push or pull door. He also tells them that the guy they are talking to is just a puppet and questions if they don't know that. The Lang house leader thanks him with a mysterious look. Today's video starts with Mash entering the headquarters of the Lupus Magic, an elite group from the Lang house. Their leader asks if Mash is the first-year boy who won a gold coin. Mash confirms, and the weird guy asks him why he wants to become a divine visionary. Mash straightforwardly says that by doing so, he can live in peace with his family. The guy says that's wonderful, but unfortunately, he's wrong, because divine visionaries are people who build that world, who carry the word of the gods. And someone as weak as Mash could never bear the creator's vision. The guy starts talking a lot of nonsense to Mash, saying he wants to return the world to how it was before, where the strongest subdued and ruled over the weaker. However, Mash pays no attention to what he says. And in the end, he mocks the leader of that place. The leader gets pretty angry and says he considered that as hostility from him. Mash, on the other hand, apologizes and says it wasn't his intention. The long-haired guy then says that if that's the case, he should hand over his gold coin since he could make better use of it than Mash. But of course, Mash refuses and says he won't give his coin to him in any way. At this moment, the guy sends one of his puppets to attack Mash. Our protagonist easily deals with it and quickly takes the puppet out of Abel's control, the sneaky long-haired guy. And right after Mash does that, the puppet returns to being a normal human. Mash at this point says that Abel isn't much, and that alone wouldn't be enough to defeat him. However, a stronger puppet grabs him and takes the gold coin from Mash's pocket and throws it to Abel. But don't worry, you'll soon see that it didn't quite happen that way. Next, the puppet throws Mash against a pillar with great force, and Abel says he's going to use that gold coin the right way. However, contrary to what he expected, Mash doesn't fight back. He says he'll leave the boy who was a puppet in the infirmary and will be right back. Abel asks if he's giving up the coin, but little does he know that Mash already had a plan. Mash says he won't give up the coin, but there are certain things that take higher priority. And he makes it clear that no matter how strong Abel is, he would never lose. After saying that, he starts to leave. At this moment, we are explained that Mash hadn't lost his coin. When the puppet took Mash's coin, he ripped a button from the puppet's clothing and spat forcefully to hit Mash's coin. When he deflected its path, he sucked in the air with great force to recover his gold coin. And all of this happened in a fraction of seconds. Upon realizing this, Abel is shocked, and Mash says he narrowly avoided it and proceeds to take Silva to the infirmary. When he wakes up, Silva gets up from the bed startled and finds Mash exercising like a maniac. He asks what the hell Mash is doing, and Mash responds that he's just training. Silva asks why Mash saved him when he was his enemy. Mash, in turn, replies that in tough times, they have to help each other, and seeing that Silva is okay, he decides to leave and tells him to take care. After that, Mash goes to his room and finds Dot and Lance almost punching each other, or rather using magic. Finn is desperate, thinking they would destroy their room. In a contradictory manner, Mash tells them to fight outside since they'd break everything inside. However, as he says this, he's holding the door he just broke in his hand. They chat for a bit, and soon, Lemon, the blonde girl, arrives. She notices there are 4 boys and only her and starts imagining some weird scenarios. Then, she takes them and shows that the Lang house has way more gold coins than they do, which could be a big problem. They decide to go after the Lang house to resolve this and take their coins. But contrary to what Mash expected, he won't fight the guys. Instead, he'll clean the owl house as a punishment for their actions. Lance joins him and says it's good that he's close since, with a gold coin, the Lang house people will probably come after him. As expected, 2 members from there show up and challenge Lance and Mash to a duel for their subscription to the channel. If they win, make sure to subscribe, folks. Actually, the duel will be for a gold coin. One of them immediately sends Mash into some sort of aquatic dimension, while the other, who has a giant shuriken, duels against Lance. Lance takes a bit of time to win since he was trying to protect all the owls, but once they are safe, he defeats the rogue maid. Meanwhile, the other guy, who turned into a shark, goes with Mash to the aquatic world for a fight. He thinks it will be easy because he can turn into a shark, and Mash can't swim. But while he was boasting, something passes by him at an impressive speed, leaving him quite confused since humans can only swim at a maximum of 10 kilometers per hour. And again, Mash keeps passing by him rapidly, infuriating the shark. At some point, he stops and thanks the shark, saying that he thought he couldn't swim, but thanks to him, now he's an expert swimmer. The shark, with no alternatives, uses his superior transformation and thinks he's going to do something, but Mash swims rapidly and punches him repeatedly, knocking him out and returning to the owl house. Then, another member of the Lupus magic appears, a weird guy wearing a mask. Lance tries to use magic but can't manage it. Soon, Mash removes his clothes and advances rapidly towards the strange masked person. However, at an incredible speed, he escapes and appears right behind them. But he says he didn't come to fight today, he came only to fetch his colleagues who were defeated and quickly departs. As he walks through the forest, his mask cracks, and he is impressed by Mash's strength and speed. Some time later, while Mash was making profiteroles, Lemon appears and desperately mentions that Tom, the leader of the Quidditch team, has ended up in the hospital. They go there and find that Tom is completely dejected and has a totally different personality than usual. He says he was trapped in a very dark box and doesn't know how long that dream continued. He also mentions that his body feels weak and he can't use magic for some time. It seems that something drained his magic and that of many others other students who are hospitalized there. That night, they investigate the strange occurrences happening at the school. Mash, Lance, Dot, and Finn start patrolling the school corridors at night. While walking, they see Lemon acting strangely, and Dot tries to follow her, but Lance stops him. He tells them to observe her weird behavior, and they notice that she has become a puppet just like those other students. Then, she disappears, and they hurry to figure out where she went. Soon, they arrive in a dead-end alley, and Lance uses magic to reveal a possible hidden door in that place. True to form, a door is revealed on the ground, but not even Dot's explosive magic can open. Then, Mash gets an idea. He takes one of the knight statues and creates a lever with a sword, opening the door wide. Not only does it open, but the door rises, breaking several floors until it flies through the school's ceiling. After opening the door, they descend the staircase that was revealed. Down there, they enter a well-lit arena and find a student. Dot gets angry and decides to fight him. The reason? Because he's handsome and even has a fan club. He gets completely mad and attacks the guy. He uses his explosion magic, but it has no effect. The weird guy asks if he beats Silva, and Dot responds that he didn't, saying he got beaten by him. However, he mentions that he's stronger now and won't lose. He attacks again, creating several circles on the ground and claims it's better for the guy not to move, as it's a conditional magic. The guy, in turn, says he's stronger than Silva, and since Dot lost to him, he could never beat him. However, Dot is very confident and starts smiling. At that moment, the guy sends his vines at Dot, who tries to counter with his explosion magic, but unfortunately, it has no effect, and Dot is restrained. After capturing him, the guy makes thorns appear on the vines to pierce Dot. However, while Dot was thrown to the ground with force, he makes a serious face and says he had time to activate his magic. Then, one of the circles explodes right in front of the plant guy. Dot grabs his wand and mentions that it was just a time bomb, then activates the remaining explosions, defeating him. But just as they were about to celebrate their victory, the ground becomes liquid, and they're transported to various different places. Lance falls into a hall where a guy with glasses appears and tells him he'll be his opponent. He identifies himself and says he's the third in terms of power in the Lupus magic. Then, we see Dot and Finn, who fall together with two other members of the Lupus magic, the fourth and fifth in line there. Finn is completely terrified because they have to fight against two double-lined mages. However, Dot, very seriously, tells Finn not to give up before they fight, as a victory would be a huge turnaround. And then, we move closer to the beginning of the duel between the two, which, believe me, is going to be sensational. But today's episode ends here. Want to see the continuation of this amazing fight? Then, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next episode when it comes out. Also, don't forget to give that like, which really helps promote this video. And finally, at the end, I've included a fantastic video, a special where we tell the story of Cain, a boy who goes from being a base savior to reborn in another world with powers almost like a god. Check it out, it's incredible, okay? See you.